Welcome back to our channel. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to have everything? To be born into a world where your playground is a palace on water, your dolls wear Dior, and your name is synonymous with unimaginable wealth? It sounds like a fairy tale, doesn't it? But for one woman, this fairy tale was a gilded cage, its golden bars forged from tragedy, loneliness, and a relentless public gaze. This is the story of Christina Onassis, the poor little rich girl who inherited the world but spent her entire life searching for something money could never buy. Her life wasn't just a headline, it was a storm of operatic proportions. We think we know the story. The shipping heiress, the lavish lifestyle, the string of failed marriages. But beyond the flashbulbs and the tabloid gossip lies a much more complex and far more human tale. It's a story about a daughter desperate for her father's love, a woman haunted by ghosts of her family's making, and a soul who, despite having every material comfort, felt a poverty of the heart that few of us could ever comprehend. So let's set aside the caricatures and the cliches. Let's look past the billions and the scandals to find the real Christina, a woman whose life serves as the most poignant and perhaps tragic proof that happiness is a treasure that can never, ever be purchased. To understand Christina, you first have to understand the world that created Chi. It was a world built by one man's colossal ambition, her father, Aristotle Socrates Onassis. Born a penniless Greek refugee in Turkey, Aristotle clawed his way from nothing to become one of the most powerful men on the planet. He didn't just own ships, he commanded a veritable navy of supertankers that moved the world's oil, making him a king in the cutthroat kingdom of international commerce. His was a world of high-stakes deals struck in smoke-filled rooms, of lavish parties attended by Hollywood royalty and political titans, and of a relentless, insatiable hunger for more. More money, more power, and ultimately, more prestige. This was the backdrop of the 1950s and 60s, an era of explosive post-war prosperity, where new dynasties were being forged not by blood right, but by brute force of will. Into this whirlwind of opulence and expectation, Christina Onassis was born on December 11th, 1950, in New York City. She was not just a daughter, she was a symbol, a living testament to the Onassis victory. Her mother was the equally formidable Athena Tina Livanos, herself the daughter of Aristotle's main shipping rival, Stavros Livanos. Their marriage was less a love match and more a strategic merger, a union of two great shipping empires. Christina and her older brother, Alexander, were the crown jewels of this new dynasty. From her very first breath, Christina's life was scripted. She was to be a princess of this modern Greek empire. Before she could even form memories, her world was one of staggering luxury. At the age of 3, she was introduced to her namesake, the $6 million yacht, the Christina O. This wasn't just a boat, it was a floating palace, a testament to her father's larger-than-life ego. It had murals by the creator of the Madeline children's books, Ludwig Bemelmans, masterpieces by Gauguin hanging on the walls, and, in a touch of the bizarrely extravagant, bar stools upholstered in whale foreskin. While the yacht roamed the glamorous coastlines of the world, from Monte Carlo to the Caribbean, the true heart of the Onassis Empire was a private island in the Ionian Sea called Scorpios. This was Aristotle's kingdom, a secluded paradise where he could be the undisputed monarch. For young Christina, it was a world of bewildering contrasts. One moment she'd be surrounded by servants and celebrity guests like Winston Churchill or Greta Garbo. The next, she'd be seeking comfort in the simple pleasure of a grilled cheese sandwich made by her American nanny. This stark difference between public spectacle and private longing would come to define her entire existence. She was a girl who had a world of treasures at her feet, yet all she truly craved was the simple, stable warmth of a loving home. It was a warmth she would almost never find. The glittering facade of the Onassis family began to crack under the weight of her father's relentless ambition and appetites. The marriage between Aristotle and Tina was a tempestuous affair, a constant cycle of lavish celebrations followed by bitter arguments. The final explosive rupture came in the form of a woman whose voice could shatter glass and whose presence could command the world's stage, the legendary opera diva, Maria Callas. Aristotle's affair with Callas wasn't a discreet fling. It was a public spectacle played out across the Mediterranean. On one fateful cruise aboard the Christina O, the drama reached its zenith. Tina, humiliated beyond endurance, finally walked away, taking her children, Alexander and Christina, with her. For 9-year-old Christina, this moment was a seismic shock. She later recalled it as a moment of staggering loss. She wasn't just losing her family unit, she was losing the last semblance of stability in her chaotic world. A deep and abiding resentment for Maria Callas took root in Christina's young heart. In her eyes, Callas was the siren who had lured her father away, the villain who had fractured her family. This was more than just a child's anger. It was a wound that would fester for years, shaping her views on love, loyalty, and betrayal. But Aristotle's quest for the ultimate status symbol was not yet complete. Maria Callas, for all her fame, was not the prize he sought. He wanted something more, something that would cement his legacy and thumb his nose at the old money establishment that had always looked down on him. He found it in the most famous woman in the world, Jacqueline Kennedy, the grieving widow of the assassinated American president, John F. Kennedy. Their wedding in 1968, held on the shores of his private island, Scorpios, was a global media event. The world watched, fascinated and somewhat aghast, as America's tragic queen married the rough-hewn Greek tycoon. But for Aristotle's children, it was a funeral. Christina and Alexander stood by, their faces masks of misery. Christina would later confess that they shed tears not of joy but of profound loss and disillusionment. Alexander, ever the more cynical and outspoken of the two, put it bluntly, "It's a perfect match. My father loves names, and Jackie loves money." The arrival of Jackie O, as the world now called her, ignited a new kind of war within the family. Christina, fiercely loyal to her mother's memory, and still smarting from the Callas affair, saw her new stepmother as an intruder, a cold and calculating opportunist. She famously and cruelly nicknamed her the Black Widow, a woman she believed brought misfortune wherever she went and who was only interested in the Onassis fortune. Their relationship was icy, punctuated by moments of open hostility. The tension was palpable, a constant low-level hum of animosity beneath the surface of family gatherings. Christina felt that Jackie had stolen not just her father's attention, but the very essence of their family. The home she knew, however flawed, had been invaded. This simmering conflict would eventually boil over in the most public and painful way possible at the very moment the Onassis empire was brought to its knees. The first blow fell from the sky. On January 22, 1973, Christina's beloved older brother Alexander, the charming and capable heir apparent to the Onassis throne, was critically injured in a plane crash in Athens. He was only 24 years old. Aristotle, a man who believed he could bend the world to his will, was shattered. He flew in the world's top neurosurgeons, offering them fortunes to save his son. But it was hopeless. Alexander was brain dead. The decision to turn off life support fell to Aristotle. It was an act that broke him. Those who saw him in the aftermath said he aged a decade overnight. The swaggering tycoon was gone, replaced by a hollowed-out old man consumed by a grief so profound it was terrifying to witness. For Christina, the loss was twofold. She had lost her brother, her closest confidant, and ally in the turbulent world of her family. And in a way, she had lost her father too, who now wandered through his life like a ghost. This shared, unspeakable grief forged a new, fragile bond between Christina and Aristotle. In their mutual pain, they found a closeness that had often eluded them. They were the last two standing, the survivors of a dynasty that suddenly seemed cursed. But fate was not finished with Christina Onassis. The blows kept coming, each one more cruel than the last. Just a year later, her mother Tina, who had since remarried Aristotle's arch-rival, Stavros Niarchos, a man who had been married to her own deceased sister, was found dead in her Paris apartment from a suspected drug overdose. Christina flew to Paris, only to be met with a scene of grotesque indifference. She would later recount her horror at discovering that Niarchos was hosting a lavish dinner party in the house, while her mother's body lay in an adjacent room. The sheer callousness of it all horrified her. She was now, for all intents and purposes, an orphan, adrift in a sea of money and grief. The final inevitable tragedy followed swiftly. The light had gone out of Aristotle Onassis' life with Alexander's death. His health rapidly declined. He was diagnosed with myasthenia gravis, a debilitating neuromuscular disease. He withered away, the once unstoppable force of nature reduced to a frail, weak man. He died in a Paris hospital in March of 1975, less than 2 years after his son. At her father's funeral, amidst the mourners and the clicking cameras of the world's press, the feud between Christina and her stepmother reached its bitter climax. Jackie, according to Christina, was already disputing the terms of Aristotle's will, demanding a larger share of the fortune. Heartbroken and incandescent with rage, Christina confronted her. She would later claim she had to write Jackie a check for a staggering $26 million just to make her go away. As she signed it, she bitterly wished she could have paid even more to never have to see the Black Widow again. Standing there, having buried her entire immediate family in the span of just 3 years, 24-year-old Christina Onassis uttered the words that would become her epitaph and the defining thesis of her tragic life. Happiness is not based on money, and the best proof of that is our family. Now, at just 24, Christina was alone. She was the sole heir to the Onassis shipping empire, and a fortune estimated to be worth nearly $1 billion, making her overnight the richest girl in the world. Many expected her to crumble, to sell off the assets and retreat into a life of quiet, medicated luxury. The ruthless, male-dominated world of international shipping certainly didn't expect this grief-stricken young woman to step into her father's formidable shoes. They underestimated her. Driven by a fierce determination to honor her father's legacy, Christina did something no one thought possible. She took the helm. She threw herself into the family business, working grueling hours, flying around the world, and proving to be a surprisingly shrewd and capable businesswoman. She learned the intricacies of tanker charters, oil markets, and billion-dollar finance deals. She wasn't just a figurehead, she was the boss, and she quickly earned the respect, however grudging, of the old guard who had worked for her father. For a time, it seemed work might be her salvation, a purpose to anchor her unmoored life. But the ghosts of her past and the deep-seated loneliness that had plagued her since childhood could not be outrun by a fleet of supertankers. The boardroom could not fill the void in her heart. And so began her desperate, public, and ultimately doomed search for love. Her romantic life became a revolving door of hopeful beginnings and disastrous endings. It was a pattern that had started even before her father's death. In an act of youthful rebellion against his marriage to Jackie, a 20-year-old Christina had eloped to Las Vegas with a man who was everything her father despised, Joseph Bolker, a 47-year-old divorced American real estate developer and a Jew. Aristotle was apoplectic. It wasn't just the age gap or the man's profession. He feared that having a Jewish son-in-law would jeopardize his crucial business relationships with Arab nations. He threatened to disinherit her completely. The pressure was immense. Devastated, Christina reportedly attempted suicide. The marriage born of defiance crumbled under the weight of paternal fury after just 9 months. It was a brutal lesson. Even her heart was not her own to give. After her father's death, the search intensified. She seemed to crave the stability of marriage, but was drawn to men who were wildly unsuitable. Just months after burying her father, she married Alexander Andreatis, the heir to another Greek shipping family. It was a match Aristotle might have approved of, but it was loveless. One source close to them claimed there was no love or harmony between them. The union ended as bizarrely as it was conceived. After Andreatis was injured in a motorcycle accident, Christina allegedly signed his leg cast with the words, "Goodbye and good luck next time," before promptly filing for divorce. Then came the most baffling choice of all. In 1978, at the height of the Cold War, the billionaire heiress fell for and married Sergei Kauzov, a minor Russian shipping official with gold teeth and a glass eye, who was an avowed member of the Communist Party. The world was stunned. She gave up her homes in Europe and moved to a small, dreary apartment in Moscow. He in turn left his wife and daughter for her. The press had a field day with this impossible match between the capitalist princess and the communist bureaucrat. Unsurprisingly, the culture clash was too great. The marriage dissolved after just 14 months. Kauzov walked away with a parting gift, a cargo ship from the Onassis fleet. Each failed marriage seemed to deepen her despair. She once lamented, "My most ardent wish is that I will meet a man who loves me for myself and not for my money." It was a simple, universal desire, but for Christina Onassis, it was an impossible dream. How could she ever know? How could she ever trust that a man's affection wasn't just a veiled transaction? Her final marriage seemed at first to be the one. In 1984, she married Thierry Roussel, a handsome, charming French pharmaceutical heir. He was from her world. He was suave, and she was desperately in love. She showered him with gifts, including a reported $10 million on their wedding day. A year later, she achieved her life's greatest joy, the birth of her daughter, whom she named Athena after her mother. For a brief, shining moment, Christina had found her purpose. Athena became the absolute center of her universe, her most precious joy and jewel. In her daughter, she finally found the unconditional love she had spent her life searching for. She doted on Athena, showering her with affection and every imaginable luxury, determined to give her the happy childhood she never had. Unbeknownst to Christina, her handsome husband, Thierry Roussel, was living a double life. Throughout their marriage, he had been carrying on an affair with his former girlfriend, a Swedish model named Gabi Landage. The betrayal was staggering in its audacity. Just 5 months after Athena was born, Gabi gave birth to Roussel's son. Even then, a heartbroken Christina tried to salvage the marriage, desperate to keep a father for her child. But her tolerance finally snapped when, a little over a year later, Gabi gave birth to a second child by Roussel. The humiliation was complete. She finally filed for divorce. In a final bizarre and deeply sad twist, Christina negotiated a strange parting gift from the man who had so thoroughly betrayed her. She had him make a deposit at a sperm bank, a final desperate hope that she might be able to have another child, a sibling for her beloved Athena, without the complication of a man. She even promised him a $10 million bonus if she successfully conceived a second child. It was a heartbreaking testament to her loneliness and her yearning for family. With her romantic dreams in ashes, Christina's lifelong private struggles intensified and became painfully public. Her battle with her weight, which had begun in her teenage years, spiraled out of control. Growing up, she had always been compared unfavorably to the ethereal, delicate beauty of her mother and her aunt. She had her father's stronger, stockier build, a fact the cruel tabloid press never let her forget. They gave her vicious nicknames like Tanker and the Lumpy Heiress. Food became her comfort, her coping mechanism. She would binge eat to soothe her emotional pain, only to then subject herself to extreme, punishing diets to lose the weight. This cycle of binging and purging, fueled by diet pills and amphetamines, took a tremendous toll on her body. It was a physical manifestation of the emotional turmoil raging within her. She developed a legendary addiction to Diet Coke, reportedly dispatching her private jet on monthly runs to the United States just to stock up on her preferred American formula at a cost of $30,000 per trip. Her loneliness became a kind of tyranny. Desperate for companionship, she allegedly began paying friends a monthly stipend of $30,000 to be on call for her, day or night. She instituted strange house rules. Born of her amphetamine-fueled insomnia, no one was allowed to go to bed until she did. She forbade sexual activity under her roof, having maids check bedsheets daily for any signs of transgression. She was the empress of a lonely kingdom, surrounded by paid companions and employees, yet profoundly isolated. The immense fortune that was supposed to give her freedom had instead become her prison, isolating her from genuine human connection. She was trapped in a tragic paradox. The richer she became, the poorer she felt in spirit. In the final year of her life, she seemed to be making a genuine effort to turn things around. She lost a significant amount of weight and was spending more time in Buenos Aires, Argentina, a city she had grown to love. She had found a new circle of friends, and there were even whispers of a new romance with Jorge Chomlek Joglu, the brother of one of her closest Argentinian friends. For a fleeting moment, it seemed she might be on the verge of finding a measure of peace, perhaps even a fifth husband who could finally offer her a stable partnership. But the years of abuse, the crash diets, the endless parade of pills, the profound soul-deep unhappiness had inflicted a mortal wound. Her body was giving out. On the morning of November 19th, 1988, in the guest bathroom of a friend's country club mansion just outside Buenos Aires, Christina Onassis was found by her maid, lifeless in the bathtub. She was just 37 years old, 1 month shy of her 38th birthday. The official cause of death was listed as a heart attack induced by acute pulmonary edema, but everyone who knew her story understood the true cause. It was a death brought on by a lifetime of heartbreak, of yo-yo dieting, of drug dependency, and of a loneliness so vast it had finally consumed her. She had died quietly, alone, after taking her routine sleeping pills the night before. Even in death, the paparazzi circus that had tormented her in life gave her no peace. Her final journey back to Greece was a media spectacle. She was laid to rest in the family mausoleum on the private island of Scorpios, the island that represented both the pinnacle of her family's triumph and the scene of so many of its tragedies. She was buried beside the two men she had loved most and lost so painfully, her brother, Alexander, and her father, Aristotle, the man who had lovingly called her his chrysomu, his golden one. So what is the legacy of Christina Onassis? On the surface, it's a story of inheritance. She successfully managed and passed on one of the world's great fortunes to her own daughter, Athena, who in turn became, for a time, the richest girl in the world. The Onassis empire, though changed, endures. But her true legacy is not one of finance or shipping. It is a cautionary tale, a profound and timeless lesson written in the language of heartbreak. Christina's life stands as the ultimate rebuttal to the fantasy that wealth equals happiness. She had unlimited resources but was starved of affection. She could buy anything she wanted except for what she truly needed, a sense of belonging, genuine love, and inner peace. Her story forces us to look beyond the glittering surfaces of fame and fortune and confront a more complicated truth. It reveals the deep, often hidden human cost of immense privilege when it is unmoored from emotional stability. She was a public darling from birth, her life chronicled in excruciating detail by relentless media, yet few people ever truly saw her. They saw the heiress, the tragic figure, the eccentric billionaire. They missed the vulnerable woman underneath, a woman who simply wanted to be loved for who she was. In the end, Christina Onassis' life is a deeply human story. It's about the universal search for connection, the debilitating weight of family trauma, and the private pain that can exist behind the most public of smiles. She was a paradox, powerful yet fragile, immensely rich yet emotionally destitute. That's a wrap for today's video. If you enjoyed it, smash that like button, drop us a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss our new content. Thanks for watching.